Hello, singers, friends, Romans, countrymen. Welcome back to my channel. This is Mickey. Today I'm going to be reacting to a video compilation sing-off battle of sorts between Madonna and Ofra Haza, the Madonna of the Middle East. My viewer, Loris, prepared this video clip, which is a compilation of a lot of different little snippets of songs. Ofra Haza was an incredible talent and very genre fluid. She combined a lot of different elements from Eastern and Western music, and she had an enormous crossover appeal. She was very, very commercially successful. Of course, she died very young and tragically, and so did not achieve what her potential might have been otherwise. But those are the reasons why she's very often compared to the Madonna, who of course has had a much longer career and has had the opportunity to do many, many more things. And of course, Madonna paved the way because Ofra wouldn't have been compared to her if she hadn't been first. But I'm curious to see how much crossover there actually is between the two singers. They're both classified as mezzo-sopranos, which I was surprised about because I always assumed that Madonna had a lower voice, but according to the interwebs, that is her vocal classification. So let's dive right in. I'm gonna pause it between songs so I can give you my reaction to each clip, okay? So this first clip of Madonna looks like it's from her Marilyn Monroe homage era.
Sooner or later you're gonna decide. Sooner or later there's nowhere to hide. Baby, it's time, so I waste it in chatter. Let's settle the matter. Baby, you're mine on the platter. Babe, the challenge delights me. The more you resist, babe, the more it excites me. And no one of you, babe, ever fights me again. If you're on my list, it's just a question of when. I'm counting to 10.
She sounded pretty good. She has a lot of power, but it's this kind of raw, unrefined power, right? That like lacks finesse almost. I would almost compare it to like a hammer, you know? Like she's really getting the job done. She's really selling the song and it's very powerful, but her resonance is very low placed in her body. So there's a lot of heaviness to it and it almost sounds like she's yelling. And then when she has to release to the higher notes, it's much weaker and there's less control on the higher notes. So that's why I always assumed that she was more of an alto because her low voice is very, very strong, but her high voice kind of lacks that power and that finesse and control. I don't think her low voice really has that much finesse either, but it definitely is powerful and she's a great entertainer and she's always like so over the top and big with everything and really selling it. So there's a lot of positives about her, but it's almost this like unrefined, very powerful, heavy sound. This next clip is Ofra and it's Paint Box.
Blood. I had no blame.
Very, very different song, very different performance. It sounds much more classical. It's obviously like in a temple or something, the setting, in front of a grand piano, and she's got these backup singers, and the whole thing is much more restrained and refined, and she's singing in a much more classical way. She's using a lot more melisma, right? All of those little ornaments that requires a lot of vocal control, and she's not flooring her sound, right? It's very, very, I don't want to say like holding back, because it's not at all, but it's very relaxed. You know, it's much more of a controlled kind of mixed voice sound rather than that really like pedal to the metal chest voice belt. She has that incredible vibrato that she uses a lot. And all of those little tiny ornaments and riffs and runs, they're so beautiful and they're so difficult. So she just really is displaying her vocal training. The other thing that I noticed is that she's really opening her mouth wide as she's singing. So you can see that she's maximizing her resonant space, right? She's getting a really, really wide open mouth, and then her tongue is very, very low. And so she's really keeping her throat nice and open. Beautiful performance, very, very different vocally than Madonna. Madonna is that raw power and that like sexy, over the top kind of roar, you know? And Ofra is this like beautiful, elegant, trained, very, very ornamented, almost like classical singing.
The choice was mine, and mine completely. I could have had any prize that I desired. I could have burned with the splendor of the brightest fire, or else I could choose time. Remember, I was very young then, and the year was forever and a day. So what use could 50, 60, 70 be? I saw the light and I was on my way. And how I left, how they shone.
So that seems to be from her like Kabbalah periods, and she has the Hebrew letters behind her. And I'm very surprised by the power in her voice and her pitch. She was like very, very spot on. Obviously, this is like a musical theater almost setting. And I thought she was singing very, very nicely, but it's very talky, you know? Her delivery is almost conversational. So there's not a lot of like singeriness to it. So she's like, and da da da, da 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 da. You know, it's just very like simple and to the point and almost like conversational, her delivery. But it has a lot of power and her pitch is great, and I think she's doing a really awesome job.
שימני כחותם על ליבך, שימני כחותם על זרועך, כי אזעק המוות אהבה, כי אזעק המוות אהבה, קשה כשאול קינה, רשפיה ריש ביש, השלהבת יה, מים רבים לא יוכלו לכבות את האהבה, ונהרות לא ישטפו אם ייתן איש את כל הון ביתו באהבה, בו così avvuso.
It's like you listen to the Madonna, and she obviously was trying to borrow a lot from Jewish culture and to dip into that. And yet here is an example of something that's like so steeped in that Middle Eastern culture, and it feels so genuine. I love the control of all of that silulim, the you know, and that harmonic minor scale. Right? It really sounds very exotic and Middle Eastern, you know. But the thing that I'm always struck by is just how much control she has over all those riffs and runs. It's not an easy thing to do, and she maintains her pitch so perfectly, and she's so trained, and she just sings with such ease. You don't hear the effort, whereas the opposite is kind of true with Madonna. You hear the effort. She's really like weightlifting with her voice.
Why are you at my side? How can I be any use to you now? How do we keep all our passions alive as we used to do? Deep in my heart, I'm concealing things that I'm longing to say, scared to confess what I'm feeling. Frightened you slip away. You must love me. You must love me.
Okay, so I think this was around the Evita phase that probably was from that movie. And I think it's interesting just to see what a chameleon Madonna is, you know, how many different phases of her career she had, and she could go from being in like musical theater to being this like pop star, from being very raunchy to being very classically made up and restrained and operatic and classy in her movie roles and everything else. So I think that's really a strength of hers. I think in this particular clip, you can hear how she has trouble transitioning from her chest voice to her head voice, that there is that break over her passaggio where you can kind of hear the gears shifting, right? When she's like, da 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 da. She loses a lot of power when she goes from her chest voice to her head voice. She doesn't have that smooth transition and that power in her high notes like Ofra is able to get. So that was another great example of that melismatic singing where she's really doing a lot of difficult riffs and ornaments, and she has that vocal control. I also really love that crying, yearning quality of her voice where she really swells into her dynamics, where she's like, ah, you know, ah. It's like, oh, it like pulls on your heartstrings, you know? There's a lot of nuance and richness of interpretation there that's kind of lacking in Madonna's more monochromatic delivery, where she's like, she's got the power and the force and she's gonna like just drive her point home. I think Ofra has a lot more just nuance and layers and subtlety.
Not myself when you're around. I'm not myself and I don't know how. Not myself right now. I'm not myself when you go quiet. I'm not myself, don't know who to call. I'm not myself at all. Jesus Christ, will you look at me? Don't know who I'm supposed to be. Don't really know if I should give a damn when you're around. I don't know who I am.
Okay, so another interesting incarnation of Madonna, right? In this one, she's a lot more folky and she has more religious references. I think that she really plays to her strengths when she's belting and she's really being strong and over the top. This more laid back, subtle, like breathy kind of low voice, you can hear that she doesn't really have the support, the breath support or the control down there. Obviously, live music and from performance to performance, she could have been having a bad day or not warmed up or whatever, but it just sounded a little bit weaker in that lower register using her breathy voice down there.
האירי פנייך לבנך ירושלים ירושלים מחורבותייך אבנך אלפי גולים מקצות כל תבל
I mean, that was just so elegant and perfectly executed. You know, her voice just is so trained and lovely and you never hear her sing a bad note. There's also just this like really nice elegance to her presentation, whereas, you know, she obviously does have a lot of range and can do a lot of different things. And you heard her singing a cappella on that show earlier, and then here she's singing obviously for like Heads of State, and she's very chameleonic in that sense as well, but she doesn't do the like sexy kind of raunchy kind of over the top thing, even when she's doing more of like a tribal kind of thing. It's much more elegant and restrained. You know, I don't want to use that word because she's not like holding anything back, but it's just there's a certain elegance to her that Madonna is kind of lacking in a way.
We go from here. This isn't where we intended to be. We had it all. I believed in you. You believed in me. Deep in my heart, I'm concealing things that I'm longing to say. Scared to confess what I'm feeling.
That same song from Evita, I thought that was a really, really nice rendition. You can hear the power in her voice. She had that great sustained note at the end where she really was able to sustain that for a long time. You know, it's funny, I just did a reaction video to Miley Cyrus doing Wish You Were Here, and you can definitely hear Miley referencing Madonna in the way that she sings. You know, there's definitely something that's very similar about the quality of her voice, and she's probably consciously evoking that, obviously.
כל הנשמה זה שנעלם האם יחזור או כבר מת. לאורך חייו אין גלים, יש עולם שנשבר לרסיסים על המזח. לאורך חייו אין גלים, יש עולם שנשבר לרסיסים על המזח. תגיד לי איך לעצור את הדמעות, תגיד לי איך.
I think that one of Ofra's great gifts is that she is really communicative in a lot of ways. I mean, her voice just has so much nuance, as I've mentioned, and her maturity of interpretation and her dynamics and phrasing and everything else. She's able to communicate so much with her voice, but also the way that she's acting with her eyes and her face and the way that she moves. There's something that's like very transporting about watching her, you know? She's very transfixing and you can't look away and you feel like there's so much to her performance. There really is something like otherworldly, or there was something otherworldly about her, and she's just a very, very lovely and transporting performer. When I'm watching her, I feel like I'm like really drawn in and it's hard to like look away even for a second.
What you need is a big strong hand to lift you to your higher ground.
That was a funny little cut there. Yeah, I mean, the juxtaposition is just so, it's almost like amusing, you know, because they're just so different. I think Madonna's like so over the top and like such a, you know, such an entertainer. And it's almost like I was talking about in one of my last videos about like outside in versus inside out acting, where like when you're so over the top and everything is external, it's more of a show rather than being this like honest interchange of emotion. Whereas like if you're more subtle and it comes from within, then it might take a few more seconds to like be drawn in, but then you get a much more honest kind of appreciation. Whereas, you know, Madonna's like so over the top and in your face and overstated, whereas Ofra's more like understated and really has a lot more depth, in my opinion. I mean, they're both amazing, obviously, but they're so, so different in their styles.
אמי תמיד אמרה לי, יא בנתי, אל תשכחי מן פנימתי, זכרי מי את, הקשיבי לקולך, הקול שבתוכך, וכל האמת, עד מתי, יא בניה, עד מתי.
Okay, so that performance was a little bit more upbeat and had a lot more rhythm to it. So it was a little bit less, you know, elegant and understated. And you can hear that she has that versatility too, where she can really be a little bit more animated.
How will they hear? When will they learn? How will they know?
Nothing understated about that. Madonna wearing a crown of thorns in front of a giant crucifix.
שבויים, 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 משלם עליי, שבויים, 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 יסוף זרועים, יסוף זרועים, יסוף זרועים, יסוף זרועים,
That's a great clip to end on, because you really hear Ofra's power and that she was capable of belting and being more upbeat and animated and energetic. So it wasn't that she lacked the ability to have that power that Madonna has, but she just had more control and refinement over it. So I really enjoyed seeing the two of them side by side. It's so funny because I know that Ofra was referred to as the Madonna of the Middle East, but their voices are so different and their styles are so different. And I understand that it has more to do with their popularization and cross-cultural appeal and genre bending and all of that than their actual music and their singing voices. But you really can hear a big difference between them, even though they're both mezzo-sopranos. Madonna, I think, lacks some of the subtlety and refinement, but she's more over the top and she really has that power and those guts, and she's raunchy, and she broke a lot of boundaries, obviously, and paved the way for a lot of women to have success, and still to this day is a prominent cultural figure, although she seems to be getting a little bit more nuts. But Ofra, she also was very versatile, but you could tell that she was more trained, and she never went over the top with her gesticulations and her sexiness and her raunchiness and her, being just loud and powerful and strident and like a hammer. If I had to kind of compare them in one word, I would say Madonna is like a wrecking ball, that's two words, but she's much more just like a power, a force to be reckoned with. Whereas I think Ofra is like, a delicate kind of sculptural little chisel or something, something that you would do very, very detailed, refined, fine work with. But they're both amazing performers, and you can tell why both of them are so successful. I think probably if I had to pick my favorite between the two of them, I would go with Ofra, because I think that there's a lot more to unpack in her interpretation and in her voice. So there's just more to get into in terms of her technique and the layers of her interpretation. So hopefully you enjoyed my reaction, and thank you again to Loris for making this video and for bringing it to my attention. I will see you here next week for another singing video. Until then, happy singing.